I haven't gotten up this early since January when it was warmer. Yeah, it's no April Fool. Except you can imagine the April Fool's joke on the flowers and plants that were last week trying to push up through the soil, and Friday night into Saturday said, "Seriously?" That morning that I was up very early was the morning that we were to depart, the men's trip, depart for Jamaica. We were going to leave around 5:30, 6 o'clock. So I had been packing and preparing the night before and several days before, and about 8 o'clock that night, I went downstairs and decided, well, I better get the passport. Because of all the things that you need when you're going to go abroad, without the passport, you're not going anywhere. And I went downstairs and I looked where I thought it was, and it wasn't there. I looked again and it wasn't there, and then it dawned on me it's in the safe. So I went for where I thought I'd put the combination. Nope. Looked in my password vault, my phone. Nope. Started to panic. Thought maybe I took it over to the office so that it would be off-site, so that if anything happened, right, there would be access to the safe combination. It's one of those dial. No, not in the office. By now it's midnight. So my wife, who grew up in the city, said, let's just break it open. So we started. At midnight, I let her take this part. She said, get me a drill. She's right over there. You can ask her. It's true. Get me a drill, a pry bar, and some other stuff. I don't even remember because it was all a haze. And we started after that safe. Now, the first part's easy-ish. You just pull back the casing, the metal on the front. Then it gets difficult. Drills, pry bars, everything we could think of would not open that safe. I said, why don't we throw it off the deck? And maybe it will break open. And she paused. And it was as if all of the noise in the universe paused for a moment. And she looked at me and she said, into the snow? Yeah, right, into the snow. And we kept hammering and hammering and prying and prying and drilling and drilling and drilling. Now it's getting onwards towards 5. It takes a while. And I'm really sweating. Not just from prying, but from the thought that I was about to let down the 7 other guys who had also prepared and gotten ready and raised money and done all of the things that you need to do to get to Jamaica. And I was going to, and I did, take the longest drive from my house to Trinity that I've ever had. And I got there, and as I was telling this story, I'll never forget Pastor Brahm's face. It was something like this. Pastor Brahm is one of the kindest people I know. So I have a hunch what he was thinking and not saying. I felt terrible. By this time, see, we're doing all of this hammering and prying. By this time, across the hall from Lauren's room. I don't know how she didn't wake up, but she didn't. So in the midst of all of this, Joanna woke her up. And thank God for those little 15-year-old arms. Because we pried open that safe just enough that those little arms got up in there and pulled out a passport. It was the expired one. But then I got a call. We got it. They got the actual one. The one I could take to Jamaica. So Peter rushed back to the tomb and found the women who had saved the day standing there triumphantly, ready, happily to put me on a plane to Jamaica as soon as possible. And I will be forever grateful. And somewhere in the back of my mind on the plane, I thought, there's a sermon in this somewhere. And sure enough, because isn't that how it is? And isn't that especially how Lent goes? Yes, we've heard it all before, and yes, we know the story, and yes, we rehearse this year after year. But if we really pause long enough to understand what Lent is all about, it's preparation ending in despair. Just like getting ready to go to Jamaica and then not being able to go, or so you think. Lent is about preparing and getting ready, and even though we know the story, even though we know exactly what's going to happen, we still have this little flutter in our heart. What if not this year? And that's how life often goes too, right? We prepare, we get ready. We think we've got it all figured out. We think we've got it all ready to go, and then something happens. And we ask ourselves, wait a minute, I thought I got it all right. How did it go wrong? How could it possibly have gone wrong? I followed the instructions, or I followed the steps, or I planned, or whatever it might be. Whether it's our health, or our money, or our house, or our kids, or whatever it is, none of us expects that the worst is going to happen. And then Palm Sunday comes. And we say, I knew it. I did get it right. I did follow the directions right. Jesus is the King. And then Maundy Thursday happens and we go, uh-oh. Maybe this is unraveling. Maybe this isn't going the way I thought it would. And then Friday, when all of our plans, all of our hopes, all of our dreams, and theirs, the disciples, Mary, the women, all the people who had followed Jesus, all the people who had put so much planning and preparation into their lives as followers of Jesus, it all blows up. Pastor Sarah put together a really wonderful and engaging Good Friday service, where we had members of our congregation stand right there and go through narratives about the different people who were there. Mary, the centurion, Simon of Cyrene, and others. A personal reflection on the death of Jesus. And I'm telling you, it puts you almost there, but for this gap of time. But today, despite our best efforts and our worst, he is risen. He is risen indeed. And despite all of our efforts to break open that tomb, despite all of our efforts to break open that safe, God has done it for us. God has said, no, don't despair. This isn't locked for good. It's going to be tough, but this is not locked for good. Death will not win. Despair will not triumph. The victory is ours, says God, and not the forces that line up against us. So we know the story. We know that God has lifted up Jesus and has lifted up us with him. But now what? Right? Well, sometimes when that tomb is opened, you get on a plane to Jamaica and go and serve, and you have a great experience. But now what? In this case, we need to ask ourselves today. The Jesus story is one we understand, but how about yours? What's locked in the tomb for you? What's locked in the safe almost completely that you feel like you can't get it out? What needs a stone rolled away in your life? That is how the story continues to unfold. That is how the story lives today. Jesus alive, out of the tomb, but beckoning you out of the tomb at the same time. Calling you out of despair, calling you out of hopelessness, calling you out of that locked up safe so that, like a passport, your true self might be revealed. The person that God created you to be, that you lock up for fear of feeling scorned, bullied, a failure. If this day tells us anything, it doesn't just tell us that life comes out of death, but that God is about empty tombs, not full ones. And yes, we often frame this as the ultimate release, the ultimate journey into the next life. And that is true. That is the message of today. But between earth and heaven, we all travel together. We all travel together. And God calls us out of that tomb. And he calls us also to roll away the stone of those who cannot roll it away themselves. Because we know that sadly on this Easter Sunday, around the world, there is strife. The very land in which Jesus walked, the very land in which Jesus died, the very land of this tomb today is wrapped in despair. It's wrapped in pain and violence. And that's just one place. I'm not a fan of New Year's resolutions. But I am a fan of Easter resolutions. And perhaps today and until next Easter, we can commit ourselves together to rolling away our own stones that entomb us. And when we can't, counting on one another to roll that stone away for us. so that we might live together, not just as a congregation at Trinity, not just as a community in Eau Claire, not just as a world community, but we might live together as a community gathered around the cross and gathered around an empty tomb that has released God's glory and love into the world. I don't know about you, but when I arrive at that tomb, to roll that stone away from myself or someone else, I'm bringing a drill. I'm bringing a pry bar. And I'm going to gather up all the faithful women I can. Amen.